Hello. Today I will be discussing about the economic growth and the Indian economy and economic growth and Indian economy. So in this lecture I try to explain what are the steps through which the Indian economy can be improved and what are the reasons of economic recession. And so in this lecture I try to focus in all those points. Now look at this pictorial presentation, and along the vertical axis we measured the GDP growth, and along the horizontal axis we measured the time period. So it is clear from this pictorial presentation that there is a trend in the economic growth up to 2015 and up to 2015, and there is a trend, but it falls, but it had fallen from 2015. There is a sharp decline. There is a sharp decline in GDP growth. There is a sharp decline in GDP growth, and it is near about 3.10 3.10% in 2020. So the falling tendency in the GDP growth rate has mm, has come into the scenario in 2015. So mm, now the inflation rate, because to have a clear idea, better understanding about about the economic growth of a country, you should have a clear we should have a clear idea of inflation rate, and what is the situation of a country in inflation rate. So so this is the pictorial presentation. Along the vertical axis we measure the inflation rate, and along the horizontal axis measures the time period. So you can find from this figure that there is a sharp decline. There is a decline in tendency in the inflation rate. Okay, and there is a trend, and it is and in 2020 and 2010 it was 10.53. Inflation rate was 10.53, and now it is 3.34. It is a great achievement of Reserve Bank of India. So inflation rate is 3.34. It is quite good. So there is no worry about it. Inflation rate is under control in the economy of India. Now look, and this figure is collected from the World Bank data source, and along the vertical axis we measured the GDP in trillion, and along the horizontal axis we measured the time period. In 2010, in India the GDP is 1.67 trillion, 1.676 trillion. Okay, and now and now here you can find that GDP in 2018 is in 2018 it was 2.842 trillion. GDP is 2.842 trillion. Okay, so this is the GDP in trillion. Now Indian labor productivity. Now Indian labor productivity, and along the vertical axis we measured the labor productivity, and along the horizontal axis we measured the time period. So you can find that labor productivity is in 2013 it is 4.3, and it is near about 5. It is near about 5, and in 2015 it is more than 6. It is more than 6, and in 2017 it is 5. It is 5, and in 2018 it is near about 6, and and 2019 it is near about 5. So there is a little fluctuation in the labor productivity, but it maintains a trend. So Indian labor productivity, this curve shows the Indian labor productivity. Okay, uh, now now uh, and in an economy there is two type of recession. An economy can suffer from a recession, and there may be supply side recession and there may be demand side recession. So so what type of recession is there, and it should be understood. Otherwise you cannot prescribe the correct medicine to remove the recession, or to cure the economy. So we should have a clear idea over the supply side recession and what is the demand side recession. Now the supply side recession, we have a cost push factors. What are the cost push factors? Suppose the prices of import goods is high, and prices of well is high, and equipment cost of equipment is high, and also the wage rate is high, and this type of cost push factors are there, which is responsible for supply side recession. And the recession is caused by a decline in competitiveness. And if there is a tendency of decline in competitiveness, suppose a country is struggling, and it is not it does not survive in competitive field. So supply side recession is there, and supply side steps should be taken. And in a liquidity trap situation, when the interest rate is too low, the monetary policy has failed to boost economic growth. So in such a situation, when interest is very low, then supply side recession is there, and you should take steps to supply side measures should be taken to increase the economic growth. Now there is a demand side recession, and to look at the demand side recession, and in the case of demand side recession, there is negative output gap. And there is a fundamental lack of aggregate demand. And demand side recession is because of fundamental lack of aggregate demand. If there is a lack of aggregate demand, then there is a demand side recession. So you have a clear idea over the supply side decision and the demand side decision. Otherwise it is not possible to understand the situation of the economy and to prescribe the correct medicine to avoid the economic recession. The negative here I have mentioned negative output gap. What is the negative output gap? A negative output gap occurs when actual output is less than what an economy could produce at full capacity. At full capacity, a country produces something, but it is producing less than that. A country can produce at a full capacity something, suppose 100 trillion output is there. If the country is at full capacity, but it is producing 50 trillion, so it is less. So actual is less. So here is the negative output gap. Okay, this is the demand side decision. Now look, the labor productivity. What is the labor productivity and economic growth? Labor productivity is the output that each employed person creates per unit of his or her time. Okay, suppose a country, suppose a man is Indian man, an Indian is producing $5 in 1 hour. In 1 hour, an Indian is producing $5 in 1 hour, and a Japanese is producing $10 in 1 hour. So labor productivity is high for Japanese. For Japanese, it is high. So here is the labor productivity. Now there is definitely a relation between the labor productivity and economic growth. If you like to increase the labor productivity, then there is a supply side step. Okay, labor productivity, if you like to increase it. The main determinants of labor productivity are physical capital. Okay, the physical capital, human capital, and technological chains. Human capital and technological chain. This can also be viewed as a key components of economic growth. Now, this is the physical capital, which is responsible for the for labor productivity, human capital, technological chains. And now, the physical capital includes the plant and equipment used by farms, but also infrastructure. It's suppose the roads, hospitals, schools, colleges, universities, all are the physical capital. Physical equipments, computers, machineries, all are physical capital. But human capital, it is the accumulated knowledge. It is the accumulated knowledge. Suppose the accumulated knowledge of skills labor, expertised labor, and human capital. And by increase, and if a country has more skilled labor, it has more human capital, and its productivity will increase, and economic growth will increase. And now the technological change, it is one of the determinants of the low and the labor productivity. Technological change is a combination of invention and innovation. What is the invention? Invention is the creation of a product. Invention is the creation of a product or introduction of a process for the first time. Okay, and Thomas Edison was an inventor. Thomas Edison was an inventor. And innovation happens when someone improves or make a significant contribution to something that has already been invented. And if there is some improvement, then it is called the innovation. Transistor is the invention, and innovation is the smartphone. So this is a technological change. So physical capital, human capital, and technological chains are the determinants of labor productivity. Now we try to explain the relation between the labor productivity and economic growth. Okay, now components of aggregate production function are the human capital, physical capital, and technological chains. And aggregate production function is related with GDP. And aggregate production function is related with GDP, gross domestic product. Okay, so what is the production function and what is the aggregate production function? A production function is a process of turning economic inputs like labor, machinery, and raw materials into outputs like goods and services used by consumers. Okay, it is a production process, is a process of turning economic inputs like labor, machinery, and raw materials into outputs like goods and services used by consumers. An aggregate production function is the relationship between the inputs, between all the inputs in the economy and GDP. Between all the inputs in the economy and GDP is the aggregate production function. Okay, so GDP is an outcome of aggregate production function. An aggregate production function is outcome of human capital, physical capital, and technological chains. So human capital, physical capital, and technological chains is nothing but the labor productivity. Is nothing but the labor productivity. If there is an increase in the labor productivity, the GDP will increase. Okay, so now how to increase the economic growth? And how to increase the economic growth? Suppose there is a two way. There is a two ways. One is aggregate demand and another is aggregate supply. So aggregate demand can be increased by increasing the consumer spending, investment levels, government spending, and by increasing export and reducing the import. So these are the aggregate demand side. These are the aggregate demand side. And by increasing all these factors, you can increase the economic growth. And by increasing the aggregate supply, suppose the productive capacity, the efficiency of the economy, and labor productivity. And look, you should have a clear idea that aggregate supply is not a short-term case. It is a long-term case. And if you look at the factors such as the productive capacity, you cannot increase the productive capacity in one day. In very short period, you cannot increase the productive capacity, and the efficiency of economy also cannot be increased in very short period, and labor productivity also cannot be increased at a very short period. So aggregate supply side is not a matter of short run. It is not a matter of short run. It is a matter of long run. It is a matter of long run. It requires some years. It requires some years. But aggregate demand is a short term steps. It is a short term step. And if you like to increase the economic growth very quickly, then you can use the aggregate demand. You can use the aggregate demand, and you can increase the aggregate demand by increasing the consumer spending, investment levels, government spending, and export, and, and reducing the imports. So these are the two sides. These are the two sides through which the economic growth can be achieved. Through which the economic growth can be achieved. Now the aggregate demand can be increased for various reasons. Now look at this, and aggregate demand can be increased by lowering the interest rate. Aggregate demand can be increased lowering the interest rate. If the government reduce the lending rate in India near about 6%, then there is an increase in consumer spending, and consumer will there will be some construction from individual side, and people will go to the bank and lend and borrow money at lower interest rate. So interest rate should be lower to increase the aggregate demand. So if the government like to increase the economic growth by increasing the aggregate demand, in the bank lending rate should be reduced to 6%, near about to 6%, and investment levels. And if the government increase the fixed deposit rate near about 9%, then automatically people will save, and it will be converted into investment. And so fixed deposit rate should be at 9% nowadays in India, should be, and government should take steps in this respect, and lending rate should be near about 6%. Through this way the government can increase the aggregate demand. And by constructing roads, school, colleges, and construction in rural sectors. Government can inject money into the economy. And if it is possible, government can transfer money to the hand of migrant people, so that the demand is running. So the demand is there. So the demand is there in the economy. So now, in this way you can increase the aggregate demand. In this way you can increase the aggregate demand. Okay. And if you look, uh, suppose I am drawing a picture to have a clear idea. Suppose this is along the vertical axis measure the price level, and along the vertical axis and along the horizontal axis measure the real GDP. Suppose why it is real GDP. Okay. And this is the long run aggregate supply curve. This is the long run aggregate supply curve. Okay. It is a long run aggregate supply curve. It is a long run aggregate supply curve. And this is the aggregate demand. This is the aggregate demand ADS. Suppose this is the aggregate demand AD1. And now there is an increase in aggregate demand by increasing the consumer spending, investment levels, government spending, and there is an increase in aggregate demand, then this curve will shift to the right. And this curve will shift to the right, and it will be AD1, it will be AD2. Okay, and so look at that. This output is initially it was Y0, and now it is Y, now it is Y1, now it is Y1. So this gap and this gap, this is this can be achieved by increasing the aggregate demand. If you move this aggregate supply curve upward, rightwards, then there is a if we push it, to the rightward, then output will increase, but not too much, and it will take time. Okay, it will take time. So aggregate supply, aggregate supply side is a long run, is a long term policy. It is a long term policy. Now 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 look, I have said all this. Now, role of the government is expansionary fiscal policy and expansionary monetary policy. So what are the expansionary fiscal policy I have mentioned, and what are the expansionary monetary policy I have also mentioned. So now, government supply side policies, investment in infrastructure, new roads, railway lines, and broadband internet increases productive capacity and reduces congestions, and privatization, deregulation, increase efficiency and productivity. These are the supply side. These all take time. Okay. Now, now look, as there is a government of India has taken several steps to increase the economic growth. There is Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhijan. There is Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhijan, and this type and will be implemented on mission mode in 1 to 5 days in 116 districts of 6 states: Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Jharkhand, Odisha, and mostly migrant workers are most of the migrant workers are there. So government has taken such type of steps. An economic survey outlined a plan to make India 5 trillion economy with emphasis on driving up investments. On the consumption side, government has taken steps to help the NBFCS on HFCS. What is the NBF? What is the NBFC? NBFC, the non-banking financial company. The non-banking financial company, and HFC means housing finance company. The government provided supports to the non-banking financial company, and the government sanctioned support of for rupees 4.47 lakh crore to NBFC and HFCs, which include rupees 1.29 lakh crore for pool buyout of assets. Proposals within worth rupees 20,000 crore will be approved over next 2 weeks under the partial credit guarantee scheme. To boost the liquidity in the market, the government has cleared dues worth more than 60% of 32 CPSE, Central Public Sector Enterprises, in the last 2 months. Rupees 60.314 crores of capital has been infused into PSU, Public Sector Unit Banks, and lenders have disbursed rupees 2.2 lakh crores to corporate and rupees 72.985 crore to MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprise. Rupees 1.57 lakh crore tax refunded this year versus rupees 1.23 last year. As said the revenue secretary, the step will boost consumption in economy. Income tax refund up 27% so far in financial year 2020. So, so these are the steps government has taken. These are the steps government has taken to improve the economic growth. But if you see this picture very carefully, then you can find that there is a tendency of economic growth from 2000 2015. From 2015 there is a tendency. Economic growth, economy of our country actually demands increase in GDP growth, and and this can be achieved by aggregate demand side, by the measures of aggregate demand. If the government takes steps following the aggregate demand, then economic growth should be achieved very quickly. Okay. And the economic situation is now the economy is facing such a situation that there is no demand from the consumer side. And consumer side, there is no demand because they do not have money. After the government steps of demonetization and GST, such type of steps, there is no money in the at the hand of the people, so there is no demand. And on the other hand, those who are producing goods, they are not producing because there is no demand. There is no demands of their product. So this type of situation is here. So huge demand crisis is here. Huge demand crisis. There is no sale of cars. There is no sale of cars. And people are not consuming more. So demand should be increased. Demand should be increased. As most of the steps government has taken following the supply side. So supply side, following the supply side. So supply side policies, supply side steps is required. Also required. It is worth mentioning here that demand side steps and supply side step should be taken together. But the situation demands that there is a crisis of aggregate. There is a crisis in demand. So demand should be increased. And this can be done. By the steps such as reducing the lending rate, lending interest rate, and increasing the fixed deposit interest rate. So and somehow the people should get money. And in this way the economy can move. So supply side steps and demand side steps should be taken together, and they should work side by side. So now look at this. The inflation rate is near about 3.2%, 3.34%. Okay, it is low. So inflation is low. So here you can use the demand side steps. If there is an increase in inflation, it does not matter now. It does not matter now. Okay, now look, the labor productivity is labor productive. If you like to increase the labor due to the labor productivity is responsible for the economic growth, from 2010. You can find the labor productivity is near about 10, near about 10. Okay, near about 10. And in 2000 in 2010 in 2010, labor productivity. So labor productivity is also falling. Labor product is falling. And it and it is fall. It has fallen 2000 in 2013. In 2013, near about 4.65, near about 4.65. Okay, near about 4.65. Then it has a tendency to rise, and it is 6.2 or 3 in 2015. So there is again it falls, so there is a labor productivity. If the government like to increase the labor productivity, and it is a long run step, it should be increased, and supply side steps should be taken, and people should be skilled, so this type of steps should be taken. But it will take times, and so to increase the economic growth of India, to increase the economic growth of India, uh, demand side steps should be taken immediately, and also the supply side steps should be there. Then we can get a better economic growth. um, in We can get a better economic growth in coming months. Okay, so this is my findings, and this is my this is my uh, research on Indian economy, and hope you have a clear understanding over this matter, and what are the reasons behind the economic slowdown in India, and what should be the steps government should be taken. What are the steps government should take to move the GDP upward, So hope you have enjoyed this lecture, and thank you for for enjoying my lectures.